Hello, my name's Nathan, and today I'd like to talk about opera. Specifically, the difference between how people used to see opera and how people see opera now. In doing so, I will clear up some myths and misconceptions about the genre, and I will show that it can actually be pretty cool, if you're open-minded enough. Okay, so back in the day, opera was a really big deal. Wealthy people would start fights with each other over who got the best box seat in the house. I'm not even kidding. It was popular because it was daring. Um, I, I, I'm going to read an excerpt from Grove Music Online about opera in the 18th century. Opera was less a snapshot of contemporary society than a controversial expression of particular desires and fantasies. It's sort of like how people always complain about the violence in the media today, particularly film, television, video games. I don't hear anyone complaining about violence in theater. Yeah, people loved opera. It was a way to get to see two kinds of art at once, music and drama. And it was really out there. And it was something that visitors to Italy could could see. It was kind of like a tourist trap almost. Um, it was a really social event. It's kind of like how you don't go to see the movies by yourself. You always bring some friends along. People would go to the opera and bring their friends, their wives, and their mistresses along. Just like popular entertainment today, opera didn't used to be seen as art. That change happened at the end of the 18th century into the 19th. Just like how film didn't used to be considered art until all of a sudden it was. And theater for many years was not considered art until it is. And now people are talking about video games being art. I guess if a form of popular entertainment sticks around long enough, eventually people start to respect it. I'd like to talk for a little bit about the demographics of opera, the demographics of the audience, that is. Opera, by and large, was intended for the rich. Most opera houses were owned by court, royalty, So the people who would go there would be members of the royal family and rich people who wanted to be seen. Kind of like a red carpet premiere nowadays. You go to have your photo taken, not necessarily because you want to see the movie or your friends are in it. Middle class and working class people did not go to the opera because the ticket prices were usually too high for them to afford. Every once in a while, there would be a free opera put on for the benefit of the public, and that was just probably the only time that anyone below a certain income would have seen an opera performance ever. Um, so as you can tell, opera has always had kind of this elitist thing going for it, and that certainly hasn't improved with time. I mean, even today, you'll find people talking about how opera has this niche appeal. Right, that's what I'm going to talk about next. Opera, some of the myths that have come up over the course of time about opera. Unfortunately, the fact that opera is kind of an elitist thing for wealthy patrons has always been true and is kind of true today. Last week, Sir Peter Maxwell Davies, the Queen's royal composer, gave an interview to the Daily Telegraph where he expressed his displeasure at the state of music education in Britain. He said, "I'm afraid successive governments and local authorities have seen classical music as an elitist fringe activity." It's worth noting that this year Arts Council England is spending £10.5 million of lottery money on educational programs in the arts for children and young people. So, although Sir Davies is afraid that the music education is not up to snuff, and not enough people care about it, uh, someone in the government had to care enough about classical music and the arts to devote £10.5 million to it. Opera is not boring, unless, of course, you find the following topics boring: sex, forbidden love, jealousy, revenge. Could be murder, could be any sort of general revenge. War, mental illness and instability. If you look at synopses of all of the great operas, you'll find that each and every one of them has a few of those things I just mentioned. No, opera is not old. New operas are being written all the time, like the one that just premiered at the Metropolitan Opera this season, i.e., 2013, 2014. It's called Two Boys, and it's about an internet addicted, sexually repressed 15-year-old boy who's accused of murder. Good stuff. Haven't seen it yet. I kind of want to, though. People are still composing operas, and they're still composing operas on the same kinds of themes that people used to write operas about. Now, in the 19th century, you have composers like Richard Wagner and Giuseppe Verdi, who are writing operas, well, that are not exactly about current events, at least have parallels with them, and the people who saw them could see those parallels, and it made Wagner and Verdi very rich. Nowadays, we have composers writing operas about contemporary events, but they have a little bit more freedom to write directly about the event itself. Take John Adams, for example. He wrote an opera called Nixon in China that was about that president visiting that country in 1972. It didn't have to be an allegory. He could actually write about that exact thing, that exact event. Someone like Giuseppe Verdi would have had to write a story that paralleled the current events, not that was not a direct adaptation of them. People are still writing operas. They're writing operas the same way that people used to write operas, and I imagine that the next 100 years of opera are going to be just the same as opera is now. In the 19th century, there was a huge nationalist movement in Europe. Naturally, this extended to most areas of arts and culture, including opera. Composers in Eastern Europe for the first time began writing operas. Composers like Glinka, Mussorgsky, and Borodin in Russia. In what is now the Czech Republic, you have Smetana and Janacek. And in Poland, you have Moniuszko. All of them writing opera based on their own folk music and their own folk traditions, intended to inspire their people and make them proud to be Russian, Czech, or Polish, as the case may be. Hopefully now you have a better understanding of what opera is all about and of why I like it so much. Thanks for watching.